evening. I have not given one of these graduation toasts in a little while, and my wife Layla had reminded me that the last one that I gave was a little bit too focused on me and not enough on the person I was talking about, so I'm going to try and do a better job this time.
Look it.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, he even spelled it.
You guys all know Steve, and there's a lot of great things about Steve, and he has a lot of strengths that we all admire, and there are many of those things that I'm going to bring up tonight, and I'll talk about a little bit. I think some of the things that we want to make sure that we express about Steve is just the fact that he's so willing to take on challenges, which I think is spectacular. He has a tremendous commitment to education. I think that he is the only fellow that I can think of that between cases I constantly find wrapped up in a journal or a textbook. He is constantly trying to read. I consider that a strength. Amy does not consider that a strength because at home, amongst the chaotic maelstrom that is going on when things need to be done, Steve is buried in a book, and you really can't get his attention. I'm told. But you guys probably don't know a lot of other things about Steve, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the Steve Levin that you don't know. So, you guys probably don't know that much about Rhode Island. I didn't know that much about Rhode Island. By the way, this guy, it's a little bit sad. I have a feeling everybody here probably knows Peter Griffin, who's up in the right side of the screen. You probably don't know the famous senator over on the left side of the screen. That's Ambrose Burnside. He's a famous senator from Rhode Island, and guess what? That's where the expression sideburns come from, is from him.
Sideburns. I got drunk and they got my picture.
So Steve was born in Providence, Rhode Island. I promised I wouldn't tell too many age jokes because I think it's kind of low-hanging fruit. So I'm not going to tell you when he was born. He was born in Providence, Rhode Island. These are his parents, Henry and Beverly. I will say that when Steve was born, Beverly said it was her greatest gift. That or a nice pair of shoes. This is Henry growing up, and Henry always wanted Steve to do something great with his life, hopefully follow him in his practice, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a little bit. What he went into as he ended up being a dentist. I'm not sure that he necessarily needed him going into dentistry, just as long as he went into something that involved the formation of plaque. So, I think I have a few more pictures of Steve growing up. He had two older sisters, which must have been difficult to deal with, and they're tormenting. Here's his two older sisters. Oh wait, I'm sorry, that's Steve.
Look at that man.
Are you kidding me? I've never seen that picture.
Steve has a passion, if you guys don't know this, for music. And I think for those of you that devotees to the vascular surgery fellowship graduation talk know that at least one very uncomfortable comment should be made about musical experience. Steve may be the most experienced musician here in the room this evening. He started playing drums when he was 10, and here he is now. And actually, when he was growing up, he was in a band. He was in a band that was called the Kingsmen, which is based on the group The Kingsmen. Fortunately, I think that his taste in music matured over time, so he likes groups other than the Kingsmen and isn't just a fan of Louie Louie. Unfortunately, I don't think that his taste in fashion necessarily changed over time.
Amy! Oh, how dare you! I love that picture.
They're horrible.
Ultimately, Steve did very well in high school, went to Boston for college, and as is Steve's tendency, he took the most difficult thing he possibly could because he is into challenges and ultimately majored in chemistry. After graduating from undergrad, his intention had been to go into dentistry, as his dad and his uncle had. They both graduated from Tufts, and he even went to his interview to go into dentistry. He felt that the interview was mostly just, how's your dad doing, how's your uncle doing? And he was a little bit put off by that, I think. And so rather than going into dental school, and I think maybe even against his dad's desires, he decided to take a couple of years off and had some odd jobs in other places. The first job that he had, and if you don't know about this, Steve took a job driving trucks, and for those of you that don't know this, Steve cannot drive. He's incapable of driving. In fact, we were eating lunch when he was over at Abbott not that long ago. I remember he told me, Jason, when you're coming home at night, it's really late, and you've been on call, and you come up to a red light, and there's no one around, and you need to take a look, do you just go left? No, I obey the rules of the road. That's why I don't get in accidents all the time. But Steve did have a trucking job. It was a very, very brief job. Oops, sorry, I wanted to talk about the dentistry thing here, but I wanted to bring up the fact that his first truck driving job ended with him not being able to drive a truck, and he quickly had to move on to something else. Ultimately, he was hired on as an orderly at a hospital, and that's where he had his first, I think, or I'd say further interactions in the medical field outside of dentistry, and decided he wanted to go on to medical school, which he did, and he interviewed. Ultimately got into Hahnemann Medical School, which for those of you that don't know, Hahnemann Medical School is actually the first homeopathic medical school. I don't know how much time he actually spent in
I am gonna kill you.
studying, as is evident from this particular picture. But it is cool that you can play drums and guitar. But I will say that he must have done pretty well, because he ultimately was elected AOA. And at this point, he decided that he wanted to pursue general surgery. And so he started down a surgical pathway at this point, and ended up starting his general surgery residency in New Jersey. And my intention was to make fun of people in New Jersey wearing stonewashed jeans and
White
muscle shirts and stuff like that, and I wanted to find a picture of Steve, but I couldn't find it. Oh, I did, that's right. At this point in Steve's life, he made, I think he got to a very dark place, and I'm not really sure what was influencing his brain, but he clearly had issues, and he decided to pursue cardiothoracic surgery. And we all make mistakes. So he ultimately went off to a cardiothoracic fellowship. And I have a picture of it.
Oh, does he know we love
That's
that?
the other side of my
That is hilarious.
After cardiothoracic fellowship, he started employment, and that gets us to Indiana, and actually Lafayette, Indiana, where he had a job as an open heart surgeon, and where he met a very important person. Oh, this picture, by the way, this is from the Palm Sunday tornadoes that hit in April 11th, 1965, and that date is important to some people that were born on that date, although I said I wouldn't go with the low-hanging fruit of age. Actually, there were 11 F4 tornadoes outside of Lafayette, Indiana on that particular day. We were in Providence at the time. We weren't aware of it. But in Lafayette, there was a nurse who had actually worked on the cardiothoracic team, and she tells me, there was a job in an outpatient surgery center that I could take. Well, I get it. Cardiothoracic surgeons are jerks. Okay. And so she was working there. This was before Steve was actually ever hired, but she was also singing in a band. And as it was, the band needed a drummer. And I think technically the way I would look at it is that Steve was both figuratively and literally looking for his muse. He was looking for a soulmate, somebody to share his life with. Amy was looking for a better last name, and they got together. And they ended up playing in a band. This is the band called the Hardcore Troubadours. This is before Steve joined the band. I think that's his evil, much heavier cousin over on the left side of the right side of the screen. And a better picture of Steve there playing the drums.
I was at our wedding.
Remember this?
That's
Yeah.
it.
Nice
So
picture.
that's the best picture I could get of both of them together. But it sounds so that they played a lot and Erica, I'm sorry, they specifically do not play weddings, so you don't have to
Except
feel
for
bad.
theirs.
They did
Except
our
for
wedding.
theirs. That is the only
They
one.
have a family
only play
connection.
certain weddings, I guess is what I meant to say. So I want to take just a brief break in this journey and talk a little bit about family, because I think it's a good opportunity to. And and just because Steve is so devoted to family, and because there have been some important milestone events recently, this is Becca and Peter. This is Peter and Becca. And Steve was actually, I think, if I recall correctly, Becca scheduled her high school graduation just in time so that Steve could not help me with the carotid. Here is
There's my dress.
her high school graduation. She is headed off to school at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, which I did not know that much about. I did not know much about the University of Massachusetts Amherst, but very, very highly regarded. I think maybe because I'm not sure that they really have a very good time. This is their big events, is to build a bear. But I will say that she's joining her brother there, Peter, who is a junior right now. And okay, so this is sort of the X-rated part of the deal. So I'm forewarning everybody now, because there are youngsters. But I found it interesting when I pulled up University of Massachusetts Amherst, and I was wondering about why you would choose to go there, and the first thing that shows up on Google is this, followed by this. And what I really struggle with this particular sign is this part.
Please
I'm
share.
not sure what you're supposed to How you manage to do so much you have with the 5 kids is amazing to me. And I know 2 have left the nest, but there's still 3, Cole and Matthew, who's here, and Zachary, who has blonde hair, so Amy may have some explaining to do. Steve has been an amazing parent, even going through 2 different fellowships and being a cardiothoracic surgeon, playing with them and teaching him his passions and humiliating them. Let's talk a little bit about the Vascular Fellowship. I am awed by the fact that you would come back to do another fellowship, even if it's a better fellowship than what you did. Fellowship is hard, and it impresses me to no end that you chose this particular pathway, and I'm so happy for you that you did, because you're going to be such a great vascular surgeon, especially coming in as more mature.
That's the edit right back there.
That's you, man.
I also know that we're not always the easiest to work with, and you've had to deal with an interesting cast of characters. I know that coming in as a more mature surgeon, that a lot of your time spent with the kids has not been what you wanted it to, and that you've spent a lot of time horizontal, even on vacation. But at least you've passed that on to your kids as well. And hopefully you have passed on some of these other traits too. And I think that you really have in that sense. I wanted to throw this out there too, just because this is Steve teaching at the Chinese immersion school that you're at, right, Matthew? And how you find time to do this on top of everything else is impressive to me. I just saw a patient that we operated on. She was in the hospital for other reasons, and I was thinking about the fact that when this patient came in, she was referred from another not to be named vascular surgery group, not represented here tonight, who had told her that she was going to lose her leg if we didn't do something, and she had issues, and I said, this is going to be an awful one, but I just remember how enthusiastic Steve was about taking it on, and I love that you've been enthusiastic and been willing to put that extra time in, and I love that you challenge me with everything that I've said we should do this? Are you sure we should do this? I love that you dealt with my cute, quirky humor. I love that you stuck with me on this particular case in this woman who has all sorts of narcotic addictions and has all sorts of issues that are going to be problematic. And I love that I gave her your phone number. I do have some advice for you going forward. You're going to be a great surgeon. The first thing is to listen to your patients.
That's so funny.
I'm telling you. I should say, by the way, I want to mention this too. It doesn't get a lot easier when you're an attending. I mean, sometimes you tell a fellow to bring you a latte, and they don't bring you a latte. And sometimes, you're waiting for the car to pick you up, and it's not a limousine, it's a Lincoln Town Car instead. But in the end, you'll suffer through all these things that are vascular attendingship over at the U and at the VA. The other thing I wanted to mention, make sure that you're getting the whole picture when you see things. Somebody might be giving you just an image of what they're trying to portray. They're trying to look like a tough guy, but ultimately you see that their father-in-law is not paying attention, and they've got a kid on their lap. I also want to remind you not to, I want you to keep yourself grounded, because sometimes if you express yourself too loudly, you'll end up making a fool of yourself. So make sure and lastly, make sure that your Facebook pictures and your media pictures are professional. Steve, you're going to be a great surgeon, and I thank you for being part of this program. It's been fun for me. I will thank you for choosing me as your mentor. I think probably you chose that because you figured you could get away with the most with me because I'm a pushover. That's probably correct to some degree. I think you came in a good surgeon, and I think you're leaving a better surgeon. And I think that there's a lot to be said for the future for you. I will say, and I want to remind you, that in the future, when you're on call, it's the middle of the night, and that awful infected aorta comes in, or that redo bypass that needs to be done. Anytime, you can always call Dr. Santilli or me. Thank you.